reminds me of when I was a kid, and we're live. It reminds me of when I was a kid, and a friend of mine's dad. I don't know how he figured out how to do this, like an old boomer back in the 90s. He got
Mm.
a PC, and every time you would load up the PC, his voice would come out, but he was making himself sound like a computer. Instead of da 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 da, da it'd go, all my systems are working perfectly, and like it's like,
that's that's a based boomer right there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I remember how much fun we had with like the text to speech thing on Windows XP Professional. You know,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
just type things out and tell it to read it, and we were children, so obviously like, with curse words in Serbian, and then you try to spell it because obviously spelling is different. You try to spell it in a way that would pronounce it the most Serbianly. Good
Ah,
times.
the base 133 is first. Congratulations, the base. Okay, guys, we're going to talk about a few things today, hopefully.
Yes.
And if you want to support the stream and keep us going, along the bottom, Kofi.com, the Baron and the Redneck.
We should
Somebody,
pin a comment
mm,
with a
like
link.
rather than the scrolling.
Yes, I mean it can scroll there, but it's not clickable.
Oh, yes, I'll do that. I'll write that in now.
Okay, so while you do that, I'll explain what the topics will be for
Hmm.
today. So the main topics are that America seems to be doing better and Britain seems to be doing worse. So we are seeing sort of a divergence in that sphere. As far as the ortho sphere is concerned, there was a massive uh, backlash from the debate that Jay Dyer and Father Deacon Ananias had with two Catholics who say that Christians and Muslims worship the same God. People were not happy about that proposition. Not even the Catholics appear to be very happy about it. But there's been massive backlash, and we've heard such silliness from this professor. I think he's a professor, Trent, not Trent Horn. He's a pretty prominent Catholic um, YouTuber. I did not share that we were live. Okay, that's done.
Well, we're going to begin with what? We're going to start with crybabies in Parliament, or
We
what's
could.
wrong? You lead the way.
Okay, I will. So you pin that comment. I think you have to do it from the YouTube side,
Okay, don't worry about it. I'll figure that out. You keep going.
though. Okay. So Britain has been on the ropes for a while. Things have not been going well, especially in terms of economics. And then we have seen that since 2010, with the victory of the Conservative Party under the leadership of David Cameron, who is the person who like introduced gay marriage. He introduced like we need more women and minority people in the Conservative Party. So that's what conservatism is in Britain.
Hmm.
Um, they almost became slightly based when they had to form a coalition with the North Irish Unionists.
Yeah.
Because those guys don't mess around. But as far as the Conservative Party, it's absolute garbage. One of the worst things ever. If you followed Peter Hitchens throughout the years, this would be of no shock to you.
Hmm.
Um, but they were in power up until about 2 years ago, I believe. Had the first, minority prime minister. Had a second female prime minister, and Liz Truss, was she prime minister or was she just the chancellor of the exchequer? I'm not sure. But they had Theresa May. Muslims marching on the GPO.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up now once you're finished. But yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing going on in the Irish news at the moment. Now, it's not today. It's planned.
Oh, what's the GPO?
So the GPO is the General Post Office in the centre of Dublin,
Okay.
and it happens
Oh,
to
the one where the battle took place.
1916 Rising, yeah,
Yeah,
which was it for Americans. It's basically the equivalent of our War of Independence.
it's your Alamo.
Um, so the 1916 Rising. So and it was the rebels holed up there,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
they
yeah. I
and they
know
were
when you mentioned
bombarded.
that. I just
They,
didn't recognize the acronym.
yeah, so they were bombarded by the British, and yeah, so it's a major and meaningful location,
Mm.
and this has been chosen and is deemed perfectly acceptable by the liberal elite and the liberal non-elite. All liberals in Ireland think there's nothing wrong with this. That this is the end point of where their march should be ending.
And what are they marching for?
Um, it's actually like it's whatever. It's some religious festival. I'm actually looking it up here. Um,
Religious festivals
it's
are
the
all shit.
Muharram, the Islamic New Year procession will take place on July 4th. Oh, that's today. Marching from Christchurch. I didn't realize it was today. To the iconic General Post Office.
So we turn it into a battle of suicide vest versus car bomb.
Mm.
Is that
But I didn't realize that was today. That's why. Yeah. Okay.
See, we have a Muslim in the chat, the Kufar prince.
Oh,
Kufar is like an unbeliever, an infidel.
okay. Kufar Prince.
Shia, the Shia. Where do you get the Shias? For God's sake.
We have them all.
Yeah, but there aren't that many, like in total.
Yeah, but we are avid collectors in Ireland. We want
The choice of the choice.
we get any Muslim we want, and
So it's a festival thing. It's not like a stop being based thing.
no, it's a Muslim New Year, but it's they frame it as being they're just doing their New Year thing, but it's just a festival, and but it's always a show of dominance. Like there's no reason why it would be chosen to start at Christchurch and end at the GPO.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then it's a common, like in fairness to them, it's a common enough procession route to take.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're Muslims, you know.
Yeah, no one likes them. just to be clear, Kufar Prince, I am aware. First of all, I see the cross. Second of all, I know what Kufar means. 10% of them here are Shia.
Mm.
Goodness. Such a stupid religion. Luckily, we don't worship the same God.
So let's divert over into this just for a second then.
Okay.
Because I remember having a conversation with you in the past where I talked about this and how it's been so sudden for Ireland, where it would have felt like not even that long ago, it would have felt like, God, all this mad stuff is happening to the Americans and to the English and to the French. And then all of a sudden, it's like the sights were turned on us. And within very short period of time, we have gay marriage, we have we have abortion, and now we have, we're being inundated with Muslims. And you at the time responded, "This is like an inevitability of the secularization of a nation."
Yes, because the thing is, the elites hate religion in general because religion, even like the one we would hate. But the thing is, it creates like an impasse, right? So it's not too malleable. And anything that gives any people any sort of aseity, any type of self identity, is to be despised, right? So they will lean into it, into a religion to sort of temporarily achieve something, right? Even a nationalism. Nationalism is like the worst thing in the world. There was some from London, some writer, journalist, whatever, of Irish origin, and he's like a complete subversive. There's to say that there's an English ethnicity is like evil or stuff, and like there's no such thing as ethnicity. But then he goes on and on about being Irish.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's so shameful. I listen to podcasts the Lotus Eaters talk about that guy,
oh yeah, yeah.
and I feel personal shame about him.
Yep.
Like I'm like this degenerate sort of subversive Irishman over in London.
Every time I hear like an American politician with his surname ending in itch, I'm like, oh, please be Croatian.
Yeah,
Don't.
yeah.
But yeah, I'm not saying you wouldn't feel shame. I'm saying that's how they operate, right?
Mm.
It's the old sovereign is he who can make the exception, right? So yeah, nationalism is evil, except, and all of these anti-nationalist people are massive nationalists for like other places, or
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
Palestine, they're nationalists, but like
But see, I can almost understand that from the. I like to think of things through the Edward Dutton spiteful mutant
yeah,
idea, right?
yeah,
And I can kind of understand the idea of being somebody who looks outwards and who basically is a born traitor,
mhm,
but but so that makes sense when it's like, oh, everybody else has an ethnic identity except white people. I can
yeah,
kind of go, oh, okay, yeah, you're a nasty little person. But when it's an
hmm
Irish person saying British people have no identity, but Irish people do, I'm like, well, hold on now.
yeah,
Wasn't their identity a bit of a problem for us for a number of years? Like,
yeah.
like it definitely exists.
Well, you can see with Britain, like the decline was so precipitous, like after the Second World War, especially. Obviously, like they lost the empire basically by at the end of the First World War. We all talk like Americans, so we should say World War One and World War Two, right? But that's when the decline began. But the weather in Ireland at the moment is either Sunni or Shiite. Good one, Buzz. I can't remember. I can't imagine.
You know, he'll tune out now. He tells me that. He tunes in and watches us until he gets one of us to laugh and then he leaves. He just needs his. It's like my work here is done. He's off to do
Yeah.
work. Like,
Yep. The man sets up a goal, fulfills it, and is on his way. Um,
before Posh continues, everyone, don't forget to check out. Oh yeah, we got actually somebody during the week. I might not call out his name just in case, but he knows who he is. He donated 50 to our Kofi.com / the Baron and the Redneck. So that means Posh Redneck has to sing an Irish tune today. And we need to set a new goal for the next 50.
oof.
You're gonna
I've
have to
not
figure that
prepared
one out.
anything. You are not exactly timely with giving me tasks. So this time you let me know after the fact, so,
Yeah. Just
which is
announce
not
it.
again. Uh,
By the way, today Posh will be ballet dancing for half an hour at the end. Like,
he will be balancing a unicycle.
yeah. So anybody who wants to, okay, we're gonna have to set what our new goal is and what we're gonna, or what the new reward will be. But anybody who wants to force us to do some other kind of reward, uh, co-v.com. It's along the bottom, the Baron and the Redneck. It's also in the chat. Don't forget to support us to keep us going, so we can pay for these things.
No, have to
Hmm.
figure out a way to sing something. But what were we saying? Right, the British decline. Um, so first of all, the First World War, like they got into debt with the US and defaulted on it. And I know that there are a lot of people from Britain, things like America is their friend. Like, sure, people to people, elite
Hmm.
to elite, not so much. Like, especially like in the early 20th century, like the
No.
Americans were very, very spiteful of the British. Um, but whatever the case, so we see this decline, and then obviously after the Second World War, uh, you have like food rationing and stuff.
Hmm.
But then they get to the Labour Party, which introduces like what was it, 4-day work week, and then
Hmm.
nothing worked at all.
Yeah.
And as a reaction, you had entire sectors of the working class starting to support Tories, Conservative Party, just out of spite, out of hatred for the Labour Party and what they did in those years. Um, But even aside from that, then you get Margaret Thatcher, and then you have deindustrialization of the North. Right, it turns into more of a service economy, which is
Mm.
always very smart.
It's the best thing to do. Deindustrialization always works out great.
I think either this year or last year they closed the last native steel mill.
Mm.
So that now Britain has no steel processing capacity of its own,
Yeah. Yeah.
and
As
they
an Irish,
import it from China.
yeah, we're never supposed to, as Irish people, have any sympathy for what goes on in Britain, but it is a travesty how that country has just been gutted,
Oh
and
yeah,
and obviously so. Like,
yeah.
not even it's not an accident. It doesn't
No,
feel
no, no,
like
no, no.
this isn't just bad policy. This is a purposeful gutting of that
Yes.
that island.
I can't conclude anything else. Like I know
Mm,
people are even Peter Hitchens like ascribes too much to incompetence. Like
mm,
no, this is cannot be incompetence. Like this is systematic. The amount of just nonsense about the carbon capture uh,
mm,
is just outstanding. Like Britain barely produces anything, and they still groan about carbon taxes and stuff.
mm, mm.
So even if they completely shut everything off, it wouldn't be 1% decrease globally.
Yeah.
So nothing would be achieved. But now they have, again, and they're still warmongering, which sort of makes you feel, again, it's difficult to feel sympathy for them
Mm.
because you listen to the politicians about Ukraine and it's all garbage. And we stand united with our friends, and like you do nothing. Like, I think active service is like 70,000 people. So how much action have they seen? Not much.
Mm.
So basically, no one in Europe except for maybe France and Italy has an army worth mentioning, right? What the British have is obviously intelligence agencies are very very formidable.
And the stiff upper lip.
Yeah, MI6 is still like one of the best, maybe the best pound for pound. Right? Obviously, no one can match America, but they are also like gigantic.
Mm.
So
They're basically 50 countries. They always forget
yeah,
that.
they're basically a Europe. So yeah,
Population wise, it's like essentially the same.
well, no,
Europe's bigger. Europe's about 500 million, isn't it? And they're about
I
300.
think around 700,
Is
and
it?
then yeah, I
Okay.
think you're thinking of the European Union.
Oh, well, that's the only part that counts, right?
Yeah. So still Britain doesn't count.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Germany too, surely. No, no, no. Germany especially not, because they're still not allowed to have like a proper military. They're allowed to have some. They're allowed to have like anti-terrorist units and stuff, but no, they're not allowed to have like a proper military. Mostly export weaponry. Um, those Taurus missiles are big in the news now. Have been for a couple of months with that new Chancellor Merz, um, who's a former executive of BlackRock.
Yeah. But won't it
So,
be interesting, don't you think? Well, this is something I think about because I feel like there's some form of collapse, certainly of the liberal kind of world order, the post World War II consensus is going to
yeah,
collapse. And
uh,
when
yeah. I
go
want
on,
just to put like a pin on this. Like
hmm
we will definitely talk about that when we talk about America, because the fact that things are working out are an additional like punch in the face. But
mm,
continue on this route, and then we'll jump into that.
yeah, I wonder once the because it seems like the biggest problem that's going on with European leaders of every country is cooking to that system in a big way. And when that system collapses, I wonder how you'll see how you'll see countries respond to that new
Mhm.
environment. And you may see a lot of countries who seem to be very friendly and willing to go along to get along suddenly change back to their old historical selves, I think.
I think a lot of that is fake.
Hmm.
Like the French just letting migrants into Britain. I don't think that's because they can't stop them.
Hmm.
Oh, look at it. I just missed this Mohammed. So the French are always kind of
Sneaky,
cunts. Sorry for the
skinny
verbiage.
cigarette smoking,
Yeah, yeah.
tiny
Building.
coffee drinking.
Okay, that also goes for the Italians, by the
Yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, the thing is, the European Union isn't really a democratic thing, right? Because you have the Parliament, and the Parliament cannot propose laws, cannot propose legislation. The Commission, which is unelected, can propose, and then the Parliament votes on it. But you see, the thing is that they are very well paid. Any party that can get into the European Parliament gets a hefty sum of money,
Hmm.
and therefore a vested interest in staying there, especially if you're like from one of the poor countries, right? So if you're from Germany or Sweden or France, it's not that much of an incentive. But if you're from other places, oof, like you're getting massive amounts of money.
Hmm.
So it's like this giant albatross that's like pushing Europe down. Um, but it's also a centralized way of trying to control it, and you see people like Ursula von der Leyen. Like they are so bloody effete, but they talk like they're still like these colonial empires that can just shake the world, and everyone's just like, shut up. No one cares what you think, right? They have economic power to an extent, right? But nothing like compared to the US or China.
Hmm.
Um, we have seen like these sanctions on Russia have been almost a blessing in disguise, because what Russia had is, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, basically the West hopped in and introduced an oligarchy, which wasn't difficult to do in a country in complete chaos. So that's why Putin is so beloved, because he sort of came in, started smacking them around like the oligarchs. There's a
Hmm.
very famous clip of, there was some dispute about a factory. So he gathers these oligarchs and points to one and says, why don't I see your name on this paper? Like, come here and sign it." So this guy, this billionaire, goes in, like, signs his name, and starts leaving. So, give me back my pen. Because he's like out there bullying the oligarchs, which is, why there is so much support for him, in spite of all you ever hear. I'm not saying like Putin's some good guy. His net worth is about 70 billion. He didn't get
Hmm.
that, selling Kraft macaroni art. But he is one of those people who, oligarch who cares for the people somewhat, right? He's not just a parasite, which most of them are.
Hmm.
So, but those oligarchs, he can't just fully eradicate them. But they would always like buy things abroad, buy football clubs and stuff. Uh, but then sanctions force them to only invest in Russia, which is, so now Putin has more control over
Hmm.
them. They've been forced to divert all sorts of things to native production that they would have previously imported. And China and India absorbed almost all of the natural gas and oil that they were selling.
Okay.
But in Germany, you had 5 times, like in some cases, 5 times energy costs. So now their industry is falling apart. Most of it moving to the US, by
Yeah.
the way. So Europe has been kicking itself in the nuts repeatedly. Uh,
Constantly.
yeah, yeah, but that's because like these oligarchs in Europe, like the European elites, they're they're not responsible to anyone. You can't vote them out; they're appointed.
Yeah.
If you mention you're against the European
And
Union, all of a sudden you want to skin like anyone slightly tanned to death, right?
mm.
Reopening Dachau and Auschwitz. Um, so yeah, hello Marlena. But that's
And then if you
basically
try and leave, like the British did,
yeah.
you get
Their elites then start kicking them.
yeah. They just start doing. They just sped up, and
Yeah,
they started getting punished for it. You can just
right now you stop having infinite like Poles and Romanians and Bulgarians,
yeah.
and switched up to infinite
Middle
Indians
Easterners. Yeah.
and Pakistanis.
And
So
that just
not exactly
shows
an
you.
upgrade.
It shows you that there's something above all these groups,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah. But it's
Straight away.
Kalergi plan, right?
Mm.
But yeah. By the way, Poles have mostly gone back to Poland because Poland is doing extraordinarily well economically,
Mm.
has been really developed. So you don't see a lot of them anymore. But Farage, when he started off, right, he was mostly complaining about Poles and Romanians and Bulgarians, right? Like the poor countries that would send people over.
Yeah, that was the big problem in Ireland. We didn't
Hmm.
know how good we had it.
Yeah,
Like
come back, Poles.
never everybody loves the Poles now. We're like, give us
Yeah.
more Poles. Like,
Yeah, but now they're doing well domestically, so a lot of them have returned, as I say.
yeah. Actually, what we noticed, what has been noticed statistically in Ireland, is that the Latvians returned as soon as they got a chance, but a lot of the Polish set up house here, and a lot of them have stayed.
Hmm. Well,
Um,
obviously, it's still better in Ireland.
yeah,
I'm saying Poland is now better than most places. I'm saying all of those who were reticent about leaving Poland have, but forced to by circumstance,
yeah.
have come back.
Uh,
So yeah, but Britain again, just tragic. Like, nothing works. Even like the whole thing was we get ethnic foods, and you know what happens? That's even worse. Like yeah, the first generation that comes in and like from India, let's say, and they know how to make proper Indian cuisine, or at least the one in the area that they're from, right? Because again, India is pretty big, and it's not when we're
mm,
talking about America, you don't just say America. Obviously, you have to be a bit more specific. But same thing with India. But they go. But then their children, they're not like, I'm not going to cook. I'm going to like go be like a lawyer or something. So now, when they are up there in age, now they have to import other professional Indian cooks
yeah,
because their children aren't continuing the business.
yeah,
So
yeah,
even
yeah.
the ethnic food isn't even there. And my favorite thing is, yeah, we've got the recipes. Sort of.
Yeah, like the internet has existed now for quite a while.
Right,
Like
right.
I
But
can look up like tribal Papua New Guinea recipes if I need to. Like I
yeah,
don't
and by the
like I
way,
don't need
I
to.
understand. Like a lot of us, when we think of Mexican food, we think of Americanized Mexican food,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Like using cheddar cheese,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
whereas like Mexicans use there's a Mexican cheese, but it's like an even fainter mozzarella sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But right, so sure you can find like westernized Indian food, westernized Chinese food, um, um, westernized things. But with the internet now, you have like ethnic Chinese people like having a show, preparing things like the way they are taught. I,
Hmm.
I don't tend to watch them because like I have access to like 3 of the 50 ingredients needed for everything. Right, you need some salamander foreskin, whatever. But you know, we could do that, but no, apparently, like you need magic blood to create to make something. So it's all silly. It's all full of contradictions. Uh, Spice bag. Oh, I think you described what that was.
It's an Irish Chinese food.
Yeah, yeah. I was asking you whether your Irish food is bland.
it's kind of like our tikka masala. You know, like the
Mhm.
Brits, they have the tikka masala. It's not really an Indian food; it's a British Indian food. We have the spice bag, which is like an Irish Chinese food.
Yeah, yeah.
And
You sent me talked to me,
yeah,
but I didn't have it. Where
he
would I
will
get
have
it?
one though. I did invite Posh to come to one of my slavery weekends because I figure if Bulgarians are good, Serbs got to be good too, right? So
But if you don't want us there simultaneously,
yeah, no. But he has to try and get his visa. But the Irish government isn't so quick to let people that are white into the country. Actually, they're putting up barriers.
yeah. So yeah, this is what I was thinking. Like, so I have to get I keep missing the word. I have to go to the consulate, get a visa, I suppose is the term. But so I was thinking, I walk in there and I go, "Good morning, good fellows. How are you?" It's just beat me up.
He's actually afraid to go to the Irish embassy.
Yeah. So first of all, no, I swear to you. So
my,
that's
my good man, unhand me.
away with you, beggar.
Yeah.
For having a meal, succulent spice bag meal. But so attempt number 2. I go, oh, top of them are an entire lads. So then they beat me up for making fun.
Yeah.
Third choice, I practice my Gaelic a bit.
Mm.
But then, because I'm learning, like, as we discussed, like a Galway accent, and I assume they're all from Dublin because they're like working abroad. So they're like, oh, you're Galway, fuck. They get beat up for having the wrong. You have no idea. I wanted to troll you, but I'm too lazy.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to set up like fake accounts and then go to the Baron Strawberry channel, like leave comments like, "That's a beautiful Cork accent you've got."
That's the worst insult.
Yeah, but then I was thinking, well, maybe I go for like South Dublin.
That one would actually hurt me
Yeah,
because I could understand someone might confuse my accent as being a
right.
South Dublin.
So that was my thought process.
That would be my insecurity right there, you know.
But so I would have probably gone for South Dublin, but I was just too lazy. So you have no idea how much the world is safer just because I have these ideas and never act on. So yeah, bit of a detour there.
Yeah. Sorry.
But yeah,
The spice bag sent us off.
Yeah, but I will visit sometime in the future. I don't know how long it takes to get a visa.
Okay.
Like I've never been convicted of crimes or anything, so it's not going to be a problem on my end because of the bureaucracy of it. That's what usually gets you. Like if they think you're going for a job, the Americans are especially big on that.
Yeah.
So I know like an old woman who was going there because her children had children like in the US. So she's going over there to take care of like her grandchildren because you have like a visa for 6 months. Was going there to take care of them so the parents can work, and they took that as, oh, you're going there to be an illegal nanny, and just didn't allow her entry.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I'm well employed. So I'm not going to Ireland to seek employment, and I have no convictions.
So it should work.
Yeah, I have no ethnic problems.
So where were we?
We were at. We started talking about like how the European Union is sort of crushing Europe.
Yeah.
The regulations and stuff. Sure, it makes trade easier, but at what cost? Like you had to get like the caps on bottles that are not detachable.
Yeah.
So that's the peak of European Union tomfoolery. Like that's the only contributions they have ever given to
those don't even bother me. It's the paper straws. That's
I
the
I
that's
don't.
the
You should know about straws. Um,
yeah,
maybe that would have saved you a lot of trouble.
yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what you drink with straws.
When you have 5 children, like I
Oh
do,
yeah. Okay.
straws come up quite often actually. And
Yeah.
and especially children, they're not like adults where they go, "Okay, this is a paper straw,
I
so
have
I
to be
better
quick
not
about
press
it.
my lips too hard on it or suck it or anything like that." So it turns very quickly into a closed clump of paper pulp at one end. And then you try and turn it upside down, and then if you've got
That's
a
one way to get fiber and
yeah, yeah, yeah. If you got a 2-year-old boy like John, that then it's your fault that his straw's not working. So
oh,
right, so you're like,
you've allowed this, Father. You've
yeah,
allowed us to
how
be governed by bloody bureaucrats from Brussels.
Marlena says those bottle caps get on my last nerve. This is like shameful.
I deliberately ripped them off.
I actually don't mind the bottle caps anymore. I'm fine with them. They
Such
actually help me. They help me in my defective frontal lobe, where I have no working memory. So, so for me, it's great. It's like, where's the bottle cap? I know it's attached to the bottle. Like, I love it. Like,
no, we don't have them on all things, but like if it's like Coca-Cola or something, it's
Loughrea
okay.
era 101, I presume point four. So, sorry, we actually have been through this 1014. Ishkabaha, water of life. I actually have it right here in a wine glass, shamefully, but that's because that's the only glass my wife had for me. Posh can attest. He saw her coming in and bringing it to me.
Yeah,
She tried to bring me a mug first to put it in, and
yeah,
I said, no, 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 get me a
yeah,
glass.
but then you would still be drinking whiskey, but couldn't prove it.
But it's a nice, it's a solid whiskey today. What is it? Clonakilty Port Cask.
I'm actually drinking coffee. I love these metal mugs so much. I don't know why. It's just so industrial. The most bland thing in the world. But yeah, so we can talk about the US, switch over to there because
Well,
just north of
before we switch to the US,
Mhm.
what is your theory on why the Chancellor was crying in during question time?
Basically, she was shafted by the Bank of England
Hmm.
uh, because they are in a rather precarious situation right now. They've got deficits, like they're labor. Obviously, they're going to be horrible for the economy,
Hmm.
right? But they've also been very, very warlike in regards to Ukraine. So that's a huge amount of money. Um, there were some seized assets from like Russian nationals, which were then sort of like used to make a package for Ukraine. That's a very bad thing to do,
Hmm.
by the way, because it sets a precedent. You don't want to mess with things. It's sort of like countries that deal with oil. Like you don't want to set a precedent that you're cutting off oil. But this seizing assets means because a lot of oligarchs from like Russia or China or India buy up property in the West because it has more security there, right? So they have somewhere to run. Yeah, I will try to bring some when I'm over in Ireland.
No,
But
I won't do a full detour like usual, but Loughrea era. I presume because your name is in Irish, you'd be interested to know that Posh is actually currently learning Irish,
yes,
and
that's I.
because he's a man who's very talented with languages. Remember, he's Serbian and he's speaking not his first language right now, and he can speak a lot of other languages. He probably will be fluent within the year, knowing Posh, but
Yeah,
but
unless I keep having to get detoured by potential World War Three.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And he's
So
taking it quite seriously regarding the accent and everything. He's reading the IPA and he has the accent, like he sounds right when he's talking about.
yeah, that's what did I say?
Crispy says,
Yeah, do it posh. You have to. I see you didn't use the vocative. You should say afosh.
"Ah, look,
And
see."
yeah, yeah, I know my vocatives.
It should be Diagwit of Afosh.
I'm going to guess. So it should be like uh, Or
Broken Irish is better than clever English. That's an expression in Irish.
that's me writing. That's how I would spell it.
Of wash.
Yeah.
Not just posh. Come on, Crispy.
You see, that's why last stream I kept saying Khan, because we would have to on the Shan.
Yeah.
Um, because again, we have vocatives in Serbian. There's a vocative in Greek. There isn't one in Russian. They lost that one. Except when the term Lord, like in liturgy, obviously Господи, помилуй, right? Otherwise, it was just Gospod, right? But Latin has it. I know Arabic has a similar one to the Irish one. They would just add ya. So yeah, that reminded me of that.
I promise not to detour you. I just remembered. Let's get you back.
Okay,
Let's
fair
get you
enough.
back.
Right. So the bank, they have to balance the budget somewhat. So they're making deficits. Obviously, they haven't stopped the immigration. They've had to cut certain programs, or at least reduce them. And you're the Labour Party. That's like your whole thing is we won't be doing such things. So the economy isn't doing well, and basically the rates would have to change, the interest rates would have to change, but then the bond market reacted to her crying, right? So just before that, Kemi Badenoch, who is the leader of the Conservative Party, was just berating them, and I think she was trying not to cry, but couldn't hold it in.
Yeah.
Um,
The pointing, the moment of the pointing and everything, it was actually so embarrassing.
yeah.
Where you could see it on her face. Like it looked like a child, or maybe a bullied child in secondary school trying to go, like, just trying to say something to make it look like you're not the one who's about to cry.
Yeah, and I think she wasn't trying to wipe the tears away because it would be even more obvious in Parliament, at least.
Yeah.
So it's not going well. Approval rating for Keir Starmer is at like 13% or something. He dropped the Labour Party. I'm not sure if it's Keir Starmer personally or the Labour Party. I think it was Keir Starmer personally. Had a 56% drop approval in his first year. So that's outstanding. You know how we look at American satisfaction polls, like approval rating for presidents, and they're like, "Oh, Trump is at 40.
Oh, he's in serious trouble now."
And then European leaders are all at 12.
Yeah.
And then they could go, "Oh yeah."
Yeah, in Ireland it'll be like Sinn Féin are on the rise. They're up to 19%. Like who can possibly compete with them now?
So it's rubbish. But that's what I think it's sort of a cause and effect and a bit of a switcheroo from those. So they are doing pretty poorly. I don't know. I mean, Germany is pretty buggered unless there's a resumption of gas from Russia.
Yeah.
And that's going to be a problem because Russians are now almost completely divested from Europe.
Yeah.
And that's not good for anyone because Russians have probably the highest quality natural gas and petrol. Right, it needs the least amount of refining. So not only do they have it in abundance, but they don't need a lot of refinement, so they can sell it at very good prices.
Yeah.
Right. For themselves, obviously, like the general markets don't just follow one trend. Like probably the worst one, everyone talks about the amount of oil that Venezuela has. Yeah, but it's very, very poor quality and needs a lot of refining. Same with the tar pits in Canada and stuff, right? And I'm not a petroleum engineer or anything, but they will tell you which ones can be used for which. But Germany was fueled, the economic engine, with all the bad things that they have put on themselves. They 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 destroyed like their own energy system and everything.
It's fine. It's fine.
Okay, but then they had cheap, good quality energy from Russia. Now they don't and haven't for years. So you have an overregulated country that could make it through that because they had cheap energy, and now they haven't got it. So I don't know when it will end, and I don't know if Russia would be happy to get back into it with the Europeans
Yeah.
because it's been systematically so led. I don't know if people know this. Like Putin was very pro-Western. Like he wanted
Yeah.
to join NATO,
Yeah.
and they said no, and then kept sort of breaking every line that Russia drew. And so, Western elites, this is what annoys me so much, about like Western conservatives. Is like the same elites that are screwing you, you trust them on foreign policy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Many German
Many
pension.
German pensioners on waiting lists for stoves to heat their homes in winter, declining standard of living. This
Yeah,
is Germany's another country that I feel it's just so tragic to see such a proud country just be gutted
yeah.
culturally and in every other way. Um, it's
It's honestly so dispiriting. France is another one. I don't know. Because there is no option. We've seen things with the AfD in Germany, Alternative für Deutschland, right? They tried to like convict them of like extremism and stuff to shut down the party. But you got the CDU, the Christian Democratic Union. That's Angela Merkel's party. They are in charge right now. Before them were the Greens.
yeah,
And again, like German politics is impossible to follow. Like you have to have like 3 researchers doing it simultaneously because it's a federation. Like it's not a republic.
Hmm.
So they have their own individual states, so to speak.
Yeah.
The richest one, obviously, being Bavaria. It's like the center of the automotive industry and all sorts of things. But you have like 50 parties, and like coalitions are massive, have massive numbers of them. So no one gets to do anything because what that leads to is that the civil service does everything because you are on such thin ice every time you get elected that you can't resist anything the civil service wants done. So the deep state just has free reign. That's another problem.
Hmm.
And those people are mad. Like Angela Merkel's parents fled from Western Germany to Eastern Germany.
But are these like just sorry to bring it back to those tears? Are the tears that we're seeing from this woman? Is this like I'm sure you've heard Sargon of Akkad's take that he recognizes it as her and her ilk and the sort of panicking about the fall of their worldview.
Yeah.
I take sort of hope from that.
I think everyone is basically panicking, and I think they've been panicking a lot since Trump got elected. So things are only getting worse for them. The consensus is falling apart. The things that have happened. So let's switch over to the US a bit because it's connected. Remember when Trump got elected and we had like European politicians crying on television? Nice move with the donor bar.
Oh no, guys, look, our donor bar is empty. If you would like to donate to the Baron and the Red.
No, we should have waited for us to finish and then post the recording edited. But right, so like European politics, I don't know if we even share common values anymore. That's when J.D. Vance went to Germany and said, stop taking people's free speech.
Mm.
So we don't even share like what European values they keep talking. European values, just like all liberal values, are basically get foreigners in, legalize drugs and prostitution. That's what they mean when they say freedom,
Mm.
right?
Well,
In America, it is actually some manner of freedom, like freedom of expression and stuff. Obviously, they crack down on it when they feel necessary, but they don't feel it's necessary all that often.
yeah, they have certain important freedoms. I feel like in America
Yes.
that they demand, but then they'll put up with they'll put up with some freedoms being taken away that we would find crazy over here.
But that also leads to like a delusion about, for example, how dictatorial Russia is, or China even. Like in China, you have those. You can find like images. Like there's like a giant skyscrapers, and then like a small bloody shanty there
Mm.
because the person didn't want to give up the property.
Mm.
And you think, oh yeah, that's China. They're just going to go in and like
Yeah.
bayonet him to death. Like, but they don't because it's this. I'm so annoyed that we always are served from the Western propaganda. Like, always, it's always two barrels, right? And they're very opposite, but both apply at the same time. And with Putin, I mentioned that he's both a religious zealot and a godless atheist. He's a communist and and a czarist. So he's restoring both the Soviet Union and the empire, Russian Empire, right? The Russian army is both will roll over into Paris by tomorrow if we don't help Ukraine. But at the same time, Russia has nowhere. They're all incompetent. They're fighting with shovels, stuff like that. So it's just madness all the time. But both sets are applied to them constantly because it doesn't matter. What matters is that things stick. So whichever one works for you. When I was on Jay's channel and I was giving constant like many examples of how things don't just you can't just pull meaning out of a word, right? Like some sigil or something. And I gave as many examples as I could
Mm.
because my idea was, well, it doesn't matter. You don't have to remember all of these. But if the numbers example helps you out, helps you to understand this, good. You don't have to understand like the other ones.
Mm.
And if some other works for you and you don't understand the number ones, so be it. But my idea was to get a message across. But this is also the case with this propaganda, right? And again, China is going to conquer Taiwan and stuff because they represent Taiwan as oh, we will never. Why am I doing a Japanese accent? Oh, we will never surrender. um, but like, no, that it's not that simple.
Mm.
It's always like we have these guys who are like purely the good guys, and right, uh, people just reduce it to a very simple binary. It's evil China versus good guy Taiwan, but it's not that simple. A
Mm.
lot of people in Taiwan are pro-China, but no one ever wants to acknowledge these things. And this is what was so annoying. Remember last time we talked about Ted Cruz and him not knowing like the population of Iran.
Mm.
Like a lot of times that you think, oh, this is unstable, and I did say Iran was unstable, like when I was commenting on the war in Israel. They are now less unstable because now you attack them. That tends to galvanize the populace. Not remember how everyone in America was basically rallied around George Bush after 9/11.
Mm.
Everyone.
Yeah.
So that happens in other countries as well. Because guess what? People don't like to get blown up.
Yeah.
Some are. Apparently the British.
It's
But, no,
it's
no,
a great
but
way to get them out of your country, I've heard.
yeah. But you don't just do that.
Mm.
I'm truly sick of the fact that no one. The U.S. used to have the best Russian experts imaginable for good reason,
Mm.
right? I think part of it is that they were actually afraid of the Soviet Union and aren't actually afraid of Russia. But when they were actually afraid of the Soviet Union, they had experts who knew Russian history, who knew history of other constituent
They still do
republics.
educate a certain percentage of the Marines in Russian.
But none of them get to any advisory positions.
No, no.
So you have people like Colonel Douglas MacGregor. He took like Russian history and stuff. No one listens to him. Basically, he was some type of advisory role for Donald Trump in the last administration, not this. But the man's been pretty spot on in predictions. Not all of them. He not that good at economics, I'm afraid. But obviously he's a colonel. he leads like tank battalions. But whatever the case, no one has actual knowledge because you don't want to. That tends to muddy things up.
Mm.
Right? So the people who actually make decisions don't want the elected officials to have good info. Just the info that tends to tilt them to the side. Right? It's not just like eyes wide shut when they wear masks and stuff. That's for the actual decision makers.
Mm-mm.
But they tend to apply more soft power than harsh power.
Yeah.
To the elected people. One of the reasons I don't like democracy and everyone was so bloody upset, like Trump is like 1 in a billion chance because he's independently wealthy, well known and well connected, and he barely scraped by not to be imprisoned or whatever, and other things could have happened to him.
I find myself dubious of Trump all the time, and then his reaction recently, or was it today even, quite recently, to the recent attack on Kiev. I can't believe I said Kiev. But he seemed actually disappointed, like as if, and I felt like, do you not understand world leaders? Do you not realize that they're all lying psychopaths? like he was like, his interview was as if, I am not happy with them right now.
Today, that also happened not too long ago. What tends to happen is Ukraine knows this, so they sort of provoke a Russian attack.
Yeah.
Like the last time, they attacked 2 civilian trains, and they had the whole attack on like the strategic bombers. But that is a problem because then Russia returns fire, bombs a lot of stuff in Ukraine, and then the only thing that gets to and then everyone talks about Russia attacking Ukraine. So it's and Ukraine is not doing well. If you've heard, the Americans had to deny sending like Patriot missile batteries. And my guess is, I agree with the analysis, those Patriot missiles are like anti-missile missiles, right? And they're very expensive because they have to be more sophisticated than the missiles they're shooting down. I really shouldn't have invested my money in checking Kyiv company. You have to Kyiv it all.
So the base 133, I gave you a link in the chat.
Is it not pinned?
It was pinned, but it doesn't seem to see it.
Okay.
There's a text to speech. I want to see. Apparently, there's text to speech, and I want to see if it works. So I was excited to see if someone does it. So the base seems to be about to.
Okay.
Anyway, continue.
Okay, so my guess is that they've depleted a lot defending Israel. And again, I think their stocks are. I think Israel took quite a beating, like in this 12-day war.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a massive moratorium on news reports.
Like a surprising beating.
Yeah, but because all the people saw is like covers like a camera from Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, and then they saw a lot of these are shot down, and they're like, "Oh, well, Iran sucks at this." Like, yeah, I don't know if people know this. These are called dummies. Like, you make rockets cheap, so they would attract very expensive anti-missile munitions.
And then
And
eventually you run out of anti-missile munitions.
yeah. So I think Israel is pretty buggered right now because Netanyahu is uh, is very in very big trouble. His coalition is very flimsy, and he's in very grave danger of just going to jail. Right? He is being in Israel. Like, if there's one thing Israel does, it's actually it prosecutes its corrupt politicians. That's unheard of, basically, anywhere, unless it's some small time politician, right, in the US. Um, but um, but if his coalition collapses and it relies on some very extreme people like Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bilal Smotrich, uh, so they're not doing well. And I think because, by reports that I've heard and seen, that the Mossad headquarters have been hit. They're one of the two oil refineries. They have two oil refineries. One of them has been put out of commission right now. They have two ports. One was already pretty depleted by the Houthis. Oh, got a donation. And I don't see any text to speak.
Oh, I'll have to figure that out later. Okay, so that didn't
If
work.
there was actually text.
If there was text. Oh, Lockray Era, thank you very much for the tip. Yeah, I was wondering if there was text. There's supposed to be text to speech on any comment that you make along with your donation. I don't know if it works for sure, but I have activated text to speech, and if it doesn't work, I'm gonna have to level up.
We have to figure out how to get to it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, what was I saying? Yeah, Israel. So the port were hit. One of them already not working well. They have one international airport, Ben Gurion, I believe, and it hasn't been in operation. Right. So they're taking hit after hit after hit. I know that and again, Israeli media is much more sincere than Western media. I mentioned this last time. So for Michael, or as, got 5 more.
Might take a second. New donation from the base, or the bass. Maybe they're really into fishing.
Yeah, that's how I took it. Especially with the clef. Why do you call the bass? And now I've tricked myself. Why do you call it the bass, but then have a treble clef?
Okay, so it's not working. Text to speech is not working because the bass said, "Looking forward to this song."
Oh, damn it. So.
Oh, by the way, Posh, the bass. I don't even know. Should I dox the bass? I know who the bass is.
No, I just want him to answer. I mean, you can hold that doxing as ransom. To answer why he's got a treble clef, not a bass clef, but it's called the bass.
Okay, continue. But I've seen your question, Mikkel, and I'll get to it.
I was just about to say, you mean Mial?
Oh, Mihal. I would say Mihal, but you might be for all I know, because I know that Irish, proper Gaelgors from Gael-talked areas will complain about the Dublin accent, or not even just the Dublin accent, the way that that English speakers in Ireland are taught Irish in school. We're not instructed in the correct accent. So when I correct your accent, I might be miscorrecting it.
Could be,
but I would know it as Mihal, not the way you said it. Mihal.
The guy who wrote the book I'm working with is called Mihal. It's called Michael. That's what it says, and then when I play the audio tapes, by Mihal, and I can't remember his last name.
Well, see, speaking fast, the way I'm saying it slowly, but I could imagine somebody might go Mihal, or Mihal.
Could be.
It'd be quite quick.
Okay, but Michael, to your question, I'll emphasized here. Any opinions on the incoming false flags coming our way in the US to justify boots on the ground in Iran? Here's the thing, Michael. That is a legitimate concern, but it's the US isn't in a position to do it. Iran is a much bigger challenge than any of the previous incursions. And with the fact that Israel has been battered, and if Iran thinks this is the big one, they will just shoot everything they've got at Israel. There'll be nothing left of it. They might probably avoid Jerusalem so as not to destroy like the Golden Dome. No, not the Golden Dome. That's the Dome of the Rock. Trump seared the Golden Dome into my brain.
I think one thing we're learning is that there's a big difference between our ideas of power versus the actuality of war.
Yeah, and they're constantly changing. Like technology is changing. These ballistic missiles are game changing. They're hypersonic. They have solid fuel hypersonic missiles, which means the maneuverability of them is insane. And they can evade anti-missile systems. That's the problem Israel faced. I think they were over-optimistic about how quickly the regime would fall. So I don't think that's coming. There's always a possibility, but I don't think it's coming because you don't have like the raw power to just do it. Obviously, America could just bomb it to smithereens, but as I said, they have a dead man's trigger of sorts. So Israel will not survive that. I have to get into the news of the day. Apparently, Trump has denied some type of Netanyahu plan. I can't comment on it because I just saw headlines. But as far as America is concerned, Trump has been stacking some pretty significant wins. Yesterday, the Big Beautiful Bill passed. So that's a lot more money for border security. That's
I just love the name, Big Beautiful Bill.
yeah. Everyone, we have a type of bottled water here called water. And I'm so upset with it, but it's such good marketing.
Yeah.
It's literally the brand name is called Water.
Yeah.
Voda. Right? So it's Voda. Like, and I'm annoyed at how good of a ploy this is. But
how could you have a problem with the Big Beautiful Bill? It's a Big Beautiful Bill, Posh.
Yeah, it's got everything. Simple words, Big Beautiful Bill, very Trumpy. It's alliteration. BBB. So
let's get into it. Educate me on the Big Beautiful Bill.
I'm not completely familiar with it, but so obviously there's been some reticence about it from people like Thomas Massie. So Trump has been really going after him. And Elon Musk famously crashed out about the bill. So they say it will blow up the deficit by about 2 trillion. Or 2 trillion. But because there is spending, there are cuts, not substantial cuts, but it does make permanent Trump's tax cuts from his previous administration because they would have expired. So they are now permanent. I think you get like states can now defund Planned Parenthood, which is obviously great. They've set up these migrant centers and stuff, so further deterrence. I actually support the whole thing. Like, listen, if you're illegally here, we'll give you $1,000 and you can leave. Because people say, no, you must go after them. Like, no, that's much more expensive.
Yeah.
Sun Tzu famously says, like, if you're going to press an enemy, always leave them a way out. Because if they realize there's no way out, they can only just die. They'll at least try to die well.
Yeah.
But if they're in the back of their heads, like, maybe we could still escape here, there will always be a level of doubt. So this is that way out.
Yeah.
And apparently at least 1 million have left already using that system.
Hmm.
So sure, that means you've spent $1 billion, but to chase them out individually would have been a lot more expensive.
So many people.
People. Right? A lot of them brought in by Catholic charities, if you
Hmm.
will. We will talk about that on your channel in the near future. But that's been a win. I think that the thing in Iran could go off. I don't think it will. I was pissed when it happened because it was such a slim chance of things that have happened to happen, right? I myself was not yet made aware. I've heard people saying, "Oh, Israel is getting battered," but it takes time for proper analysis to take place, and fog of war is a real thing.
Hmm.
So I don't fall for fogs. But there's a problem that the IAEA, which is the International Atomic Energy Association, or agency, not association, has been kicked out of Iran, which means that there is a potential casus belli there. But I don't think anyone wants to take it. Trump doesn't want to take it because why would you? You just stacking wins. He ended like the conflict between Rwanda and Congo. Rwanda is small, but it's probably the only competent military in Africa. You had that. You talked about like war between Serbia and Kosovo. I've heard not a peep about it, so I know what is going on there. So another reason they wouldn't want to do it, because if the West had any desire to do something to like Russia or China, the best way to go about it would have been to destroy Iran, which isn't an easy task, as we talked about. But China relies on a lot of energins. Do you use the word energin? Like a lot of energy imports.
Okay.
From, or at least through, Iran. And they are a strategic ally in the area. Same thing with Russia. It exports a lot of natural gas to India through Iran, right? So that would be the way to go about it, but it didn't succeed. And then all the people who are hawkish on China, well, if you deplete all your Patriot defense missiles, they've got THAAD as well. That's a different thing, but they've got that as well. The problem is, what are you going to use then if you want to go and fight China right next to China? China also has hypersonic missiles, and your navy will be there just exposed. So you need all the other defense you can get. So as far as I see it, there won't be a major conflict to erupt from this. Because, to summarize, the US is running low on stockpiles of critical armaments. Israel as well, by the way. The David Sling and anti-missile defenses have been depleted significantly, and they've took a beating. The Abraham Accords come back to the fore, so like the Gulf states are pretty interested in it. Then we've got, China isn't interested in anything going all right. China is not a martial force. China is an economic force. They simply do not have a military history, or at least not a good one, right? They've lost most of the wars with Korea.
Yeah.
I don't know how to describe that. It's like France losing to Liechtenstein or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they don't want it. Russia obviously wants to wrap things up in Ukraine, but they don't want to take more Ukraine than they have to, especially not the ones that aren't majority Russian, because then you're just going to end up just constantly having to put down, incursions.
Yeah.
But the Ukraine regime knows if they surrender, they're kind of buggered. But they don't have the people nor the equipment to keep pushing. And if the US pulls out, the US, the weapons coming to Ukraine are still not part of this administration's package. This is still from the previous administration. They would have to approve a new package and send it over to Ukraine, which might not happen. And I think Trump is probably using that as some type of negotiating leverage. So it could be pressured, but the Russians aren't going to give up on their demands. So their demands are like, we get the territories we've conquered. We want denazification, which means the removal of the Azov and Banderists from Ukraine. Oh, got another donation.
Should pop up now, hopefully.
Yeah.
Steo. My guess is that's Buzz.
Could be. Sounds like a Down syndrome person saying Steve.
It'd be common to call someone Stephen Steo in Dublin.
Still sounds like a Down syndrome person saying steel.
Steel.
It's made of steel.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Steo. Let's go check if there's a message. Actually, you keep talking. I'm going to check if there's a message.
Okay. So the problem is it's quite a stalemate, and then the Europeans are pretty hawkish. Although, you know how they say from Theodore Roosevelt, I believe, speak softly and carry a big stick. Well, the Europeans are screeching and carrying like a bloody plastic hammer. So yeah. Heading into the Akathist. Have a delightful evening. Looking forward to catching the rest later. God bless. Okay, so you just copy pasted that from Steo.
From Steo. I'm pretty positive that's going to be Buzz.
Well, considering the content of this, I would assume as well. We have corroborating evidence.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what's going on. There are good things happening, but obviously we started off with the bad things happening. But you see, Europe is just not serious. They cannot support what's happening in Ukraine, but they're pretending to be able to. The coalition of the willing. That's such poor marketing. But you see, this is what I'm talking about. Everyone is just going for buzzwords.
Vibes, I think the young people are calling it.
Yeah. You didn't hear me. I said going for Steo words.
Yeah, Steo words.
So it's just vibes, every time they hear something positive about Russia, it's a bot, or every time something negative, oh, this is like propaganda and stuff. No one is trying to be serious about this, right? Everyone's just taking the desired outcome. So yeah, Buzz's check will bounce. So that's it. We didn't even get to the Muslim thing, but that maybe we keep that for
that could be a topic for another day. That's raging. That's the hot topic at the moment. But we still need Ben, I believe, has earned a song.
Oh yeah, but it didn't bring any instruments or something. I mean, I haven't practiced anything on the.
You could prep for it, and we could open with it maybe on the next episode.
Yeah, that would be best, because I know what I would like to sing. I may even prepare like an Irish song in Irish.
Oh.
For extra benefits for not for being late with the delivery. which I
Ireland
found
has,
out about in the prep room for this
in,
stream.
in fairness, Ireland has the largest territorial fishing waters in Europe, yet our quotas have withered down to a mere trickle. It's an absolute disgrace. We should actually do an episode just talking about the disgraceful treatment Ireland has received from the EU overall, and how willing boomers and liberals in this country are to accept that the EU has been nothing but good to us, and that
Mhm.
anybody who would ever state anything otherwise is deluded, maybe needs to get educated. Um, it's a joke.
Yeah, I remember from Top Gear, like the early days, when when Jeremy Clark says, "Anyone from Spain here?" Someone says, "Yes." Give us our fish back. So yeah, it's because they don't want you to succeed. They want you
No,
to follow rules they implement.
yeah.
That is a mechanism of control, and it's honestly pretty diabolical.
And it's
And
pretty obvious how much you can follow it along with Agenda 2030. If you actually read through Agenda
Mhm,
2030, you can just follow, oh, okay, that's what they're doing. It says it right there.
yeah,
Like,
it's just how to make it happen, right?
hmm,
So every every event is a potential, nudging towards the goal.
hmm,
But you know how everyone's like, oh, I think, okay, let's not mention by name, but like, oh, you see, they had Agenda 2020, but now it's 2030. Like, you severely underestimated uh, the elites and how good they are at what they do,
yeah.
right? Because we see them bumbling politicians. Oh, yeah, but they're the politicians. I didn't mention about the democracy thing. What I'm so annoyed about is everyone's like, this person got elected and now they're not doing the things they want to. Yeah, because you've thrown a novice into a den of highly well funded, highly knowledgeable, highly competent wolves. Like, what do you think is going to happen? Like, there's no, the reason you can have, like, Russia plans a lot longer term than the West, but then China plans a lot longer term than Russia
Hmm, hmm,
because they can.
hmm.
Like, that's a benefit of having a more autocratic system. There are absolutely downsides. I'm not just saying, but if you have like a king, like, what are you going to threaten him with? Re-election? Obviously, you can threaten him with assassination, but that you can do that with democracies even easier.
Yeah. Our Taoiseach Micheál Martin said this.
Mhm.
We want nothing to do with a backwards looking idea of sovereignty. We remain absolutely committed to the goals and ideals of the European Union.
Yeah,
That's our Taoiseach. So that'd be like the Prime Minister,
me all.
Micheál Martin.
It's again pathetic, but that's like the boomer thinking,
Yeah.
because if you want sovereignty, do you want the tiny moustache man back?
Uh, uh, uh.
Right, that's all they can think about.
Such a, yeah. It's I don't know. And if I remember rightly, he said that around about the times. What was it that was going on at the time? It was commemorating. It was commemorating independence, and it was in the context of talking about something else. I'm trying to remember the context, but the context added so much to it. It was, maybe there was some uproar about the idea of adding they wanted to add British soldiers' names into a memorial for heroes that died for Ireland's independence. Uh, right.
Rough one to get through.
I think that was the context. Like, it was in that week that he said that. It was something like that.
And which party is he in?
Fianna Fáil.
Okay.
And he, yeah, and he's just such a typical example of the weak men that come after the strong men. Like, his father was a boxer,
Mm.
and like a well-known boxer and everything, and then there's videos of him, and he's supposed to be holding like a shovel full of soil and emptying it
Mm.
onto something, and you can tell he doesn't know how to empty a
Sure.
shovel. He's like,
Uh-huh.
what do I do with this?
Yeah.
It's
Definitely. Uh, I don't know. In my mind, like, like when you get children, you have a boy and a girl. Like to me, like the girl is like, oh, she's so sweet and adorable up until like puberty and stuff, and then like, okay, we have to do something with. If I had a son, like at 5 years old, I'd be just turning into like, we must prepare you for this world. Go and get him into boot camp or something.
Mm.
I don't know. That's how I think now. Probably
Chris,
will not play it out.
Crispy mentioned how we're all mongrels. Have you heard about
Mongrel.
you haven't come across this? There's a documentary being put out on, or has already probably been put out on. I don't have TV, so I don't watch RTE. But the Irish Television Network put out a documentary basically exploring the history of the Irish people genetically, and
Mhm.
and there was some statement that came along with it that the
Yeah,
Irish have
Irish
always
have
been
always been mongrels. Yeah, I saw
always
an
mongrels.
article.
Yeah, and we are, when you actually just do minor research, we are probably the least mongrel nation
Yeah,
on Earth.
guess what? Like an isolated island, not too diverse. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
How convenient.
yeah.
I mean, it's so annoying. Like I know that ethnicity doesn't mean purity,
Mhm,
right? The
mhm.
French aren't a singular
It's like you have to
ethnicity
arrive
genetically.
on the planet in your ultimate form,
Yeah,
or else you're a mongrel. It's like, guess what, guys? Labradors didn't just get put here as they are now,
yeah.
right?
But
You know,
everyone
like,
recognizes a Labrador.
but you don't call a Labrador a mongrel, right?
Yeah,
You know, like that's the whole point of the word mongrel.
yeah.
It's bizarre. It's such a bizarre thing, and for a country like Ireland, who have been largely unchanged since since the Bronze Age. You know, there's been three major incursions, and that would be the Normans, the
Normans.
Vikings, and a certain amount of Anglo-Saxon.
Hmm.
Um, but combined, those three things make up less than 10% of the average Irish person's
DNA.
DNA. So we have 90%, and 60% of our DNA is the Bell Beakers
Hmm.
who arrived
Yeah.
into Ireland like in the early Bronze Age.
Hmm.
Um, and the rest is Neolithic farmer DNA.
Nice.
Original Mediterranean. You know, they moved from the Mediterranean and they landed in Ireland, and
Hmm.
Neolithic farmers.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so we're literally a very, very genetically consistent and pure, right? But not
Right,
pure.
but
Right.
you would expect that from Ireland. You would expect it from Scotland. You would expect it from like uh, Scandinavia, especially because Scandinavia just doesn't have resources, right?
Mm.
So they don't have strategic importance. They don't have uh, resource importance. Um, but then you come to somewhere like the Balkans, and everyone's interested in the Balkans. It goes over to like to go through the Balkans. You have to go through the Balkans to get to Asia, unless you're doing it by sea, right? And then you had Rome here, you had Greece here, you had the Thracians, you had the Dacians, you have the Slavs, you have all sorts of people. So obviously things mix up just to an extent. Um, so you won't get the same consistency in a place like this as you would have from, as we said, isolated. Obviously not as isolated with modern technology, but if you think about historically, like Ireland is pretty isolated
Mm.
because again, what are you going to do? Attack Iceland from it?
Yeah, 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 yeah.
That would be very important.
Yeah,
Uh,
even the Romans didn't bother. They got as far as
yeah,
Britain and they just stopped.
yeah. To be honest, they got to the Picts in Scotland and got kind of battered, and then had to build up the Hadrian Wall to
Mm.
keep them out. There's a Blackadder short. Like Centurion, what is that giant orange hedge moving towards us? That's not a giant orange hedge. That's a Scot. Because they're ginger.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. Uh, I think you misspoke when you said the Normans. You meant the Norsemen.
No, the Normans. The Normans landed. They only landed. They're often cited by people who want to act like we're mixed, because
Hmm.
we had a Norman invasion,
Oh, you
But
did?
what we ended up with was maybe 2,000 Normans who all sat in Dublin and were like administrative leaders for a short period of time, and then they were gone.
As far
Um,
as I know, Ireland tended to have like kings and stuff, but like
yeah, so they didn't
not a
have
singular king.
a huge genetic effect on us,
Yeah.
but there's still some small amount of, but like, it's yeah, it's just one of these funny things, because what you'll get is you'll get people like the Taoiseach saying, sure, look, we're Norman, we're Anglo-Saxon, we've been mixed throughout the British Isles,
So we can import 1 million
we're Viking.
Indians.
Yeah. So
So it's the
therefore
same
Indians.
thing. Yeah. God.
Right, it's such a weird argument, and
It's not weird, it's pernicious.
yeah, for sure.
Let's not confuse malice.
And it leaves the average person who's too afraid to kind of point out these things in a kind of a bind, because then you
Mhm.
say, well, hold on, the Vikings, the Normans,
Yeah, I'm seeing a pattern.
were Western Europeans, which we basically are anyway. Like, that's
Mhm.
what we are. So, there's some genetic differences where we are distinguishable, but ultimately the same people,
Yeah,
right?
and not just that, because they're like making it sound like we're talking about like a single family that started having offspring, right?
Yeah.
No one is that simplistic about it. But at the same time, uh, it's the same thing. Like, the left wing memes, like Trump saying, "Get the illegals out of here," and then put up like a Native American and say, "Okay, when are you leaving?" Do you know the message you're sort of sending there? Because what
Yeah.
happened to the Indians once these illegals arrived?
Yeah. It's
Kind
so.
of obliterated, weren't they?
Yeah.
So that's your that.
That's
So
generally what you're aiming for.
yeah, that is bad messaging. Like
Yeah, terrible
that's
messaging.
that's not pernicious. That's just stupid.
Yeah, I've responded that to people who say that kind of thing, like liberal Americans who will say things like, we are immigrants. It's like, yeah, and how did that work out?
Yeah,
You're the example of why you shouldn't let immigrants in,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like it's yeah,
It's on the level of like people who try to say, oh, Hitler nationalized like healthcare. Yeah, he did a lot of other things that don't necessarily connect to this,
yeah.
aren't pertinent, but that's what everyone just does. Everyone just tries to. I talk about this like now everything is called sexist and racist, the left, blah, blah, blah. Okay, yes, that is true. What's also true is that the right has been calling everything communism for 50
Mm.
years
Yeah.
before that.
Yeah.
So yeah, guess what? People just like to try and impose some type of guilt by association.
It also empowered left wingers to call any kind of social policy socialism,
Yeah,
right? And that's boomer conservative Americans' fault. Now we all have to re-explain that to every young socialist, that
yeah,
not every social policy is socialism.
and it leaves people with the American conservative types with the idea of, well, yeah, the police is like not a service, but healthcare is a service. Remember when Rand Paul, who's usually very good, said, well, if you can just call a doctor at midnight to come and take care of you, that's basically slavery. I'm like, I can call the police if I need the police. And I don't think, I never had to call the police, but even if I did have to, I wouldn't feel like, listen, servant, approach my domicile and we'll take care of it. Like, no, just help. So it's pretty pathetic argumentation, and everything seems to be so low tier because it's supposed to be as watered down as possible, as gruel like as possible, so as many people can absorb at least some,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because when you get to actual argumentation, actual highfalutin terminology and analysis, you end up being accused of giving word salads, like people who debate Jay, for example.
Yeah.
Very common. Oh, that's just a word salad. Like, well, no, I understand if you're not, following things.
Yeah.
it seems like he's just talking gibberish, but no, he's using technical terms.
Mm, mm.
As much as anything would have technical terms, medicine and engineering and physics and stuff, they have very specialized terminology. The fact that you're not aware of it or familiar with it, like I'm not familiar with engineering.
Mm.
So you start mentioning parts of like a machine. I'm like, oh yeah, sure. Is it globed and just
Yeah, yeah,
making
yeah,
like it's
yeah.
a word salad. No, I need parts to make this thing work. But people just like to reduce it to like, oh, if you support Israel, you're just a genocidal maniac. If you don't support Israel, you're also genocidal. Because
Yeah, yeah.
there's no option, right? There's no nuance is a very pesky thing, and then
Yeah.
they call you like a fence sitter or something if you try to be nuanced, and that's
Mm.
why we can't have like proper conversations. And that when I talked about it, I think I did the stream like making everything plebeian, or I plan to at least, but everything has to be a slogan right now
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
because slogans are just for simpletons.
Yeah.
I'm not
And
against slogans categorically, but if you build things on slogans, it's just going to be too thin. The many Ford place names in Ireland, the legacy of the pesky Norwegians.
so we have Waterford and Longford. They'd be two
Hmm.
prime examples. But also Dublin and so Dublin obviously is Irish for Black Lake. Um and the,
Wasn't Dublin founded by the Vikings?
yeah, so Dublin, and then I something like I don't know how they pronounced it, but it's Ballyahaclia is what we call Dublin in Irish now. So but it was like Iha Klaya or something like that is Norwegian for something. So they set up two places beside each other. Down with slogans.
That's so good.
um, but yeah, Aha is the Gaelic Lochray. Yeah, so I don't know about these pesky Norwegians. I'd say if I got a genetic test, I might end up being a Norse Gael, most likely. Because I'm from North County Dublin. so, so I think they're probably the best kind of Irish people, the Norse Gaels, as far as I'm concerned.
Um, don't risk it because your test might come back to haunt you.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Be fully British or something. But,
Oh God,
or
it would depend.
French. It'd just be something totally out of left field. Like I just like
Half French. I don't know. You could, but you don't look too French. I'm very good at physiognomy checking.
There you go.
Uh, but yeah, it's again. People either try to overemphasize things. I talk about this with modernism versus postmodernism. Just no. Why do I have to either be a complete literalist or a complete abstractist? There is something in between. Like I mentioned,
Mhm.
like with modernism, like a word means what it means, which doesn't account for the fact that words change meaning over time.
Hmm.
That's why we linguists have to have entire, specialized fields where they study how that particular word is used in a particular place at a particular time. I mentioned like one
Just
of
look
the
at the word
reasons.
grand. A grand is a classic example.
Yeah, that's a French word. Like, grand.
But
Just
I
means
mean the way
big.
the way we use grand
Yeah, yeah, that's
compared
great.
to every other English speaker. When we say grand to mean like fine, like acceptable.
Oh,
That's how, and Irish
okay.
people use it all the time. They'd be like, "How are you?" "Oh, I'm grand. I'm grand." Like and it
Okay.
means like
That has a bit of sarcasm to it, I believe. I'm
no, like you
noticing.
say it all the time. Like uh, if somebody came to the door, and actually, hold on, even recently, somebody, oh yeah, there was a woman parked in the way when I was trying to do deliveries today,
Mhm.
and she was like, "Sorry, sorry, sorry." I was like, "Oh, you're grand, you're grand." So like,
Oh,
it's
so it's
just like that.
basically okay.
It means acceptable, fine, everything. It's fine. But when Americans hear it, they hear grand the way English people and
Yeah.
Americans say grand, which means very fancy,
Yeah.
or
Well, the British will use it as in like extraordinary. Oh, how
extraordinary.
grand.
Yeah, it's very
Uh,
grand. Yeah. So Americans think when we say it that we're very high end, like that were always very positive. No
Yeah.
matter what you say to an Irish person, everything's grand. Like, they totally misexperience or
Yeah, I didn't
misinterpret the
know. You
whole
see,
thing.
I went for the English usage, and now you've corrected it. Uh, but yeah, it's it's many other things, especially technical terms. You know, one of the reasons the donation of Constantine, which was an alleged donation of or appointment of the Pope um, to have secular powers, because the Pope healed the Emperor Constantine, and at about, I think, the 16th century, a Catholic priest who was a linguist uh, or a philologist rather was given the document to analyze, and it says it uses the word fief. That's a Norman term, and there's no reason an early 4th century Roman emperor would use a Norman term. But we know who liked to use Norman terms. Mostly the Normans.
They were very
So
fond of Norman terms.
actually, I should say Norman, a Frankish term. The Franks
Hmm.
were very fond of Frankish terms. Like basically, whenever in English you get Frankish terminology, like vassal and suzerain and fiefdoms and so on, because obviously in the 11th century the Normans conquer England. So yeah, everything's pretty Gallicized. But you see, that's how you know things. But at the same time, um, even the term peasant is like French, paysan. It means landman, basically. Um, but you see, the things change meanings over time. Different philosophers use different terms differently, right? So you can't just say a word means that and that's it, because it obviously doesn't. Many things we use for computer-related terms, like rendering, is my
Hmm.
favorite. Even to compute means to count.
Yeah.
So I think we're doing more than counting right now.
At this point, yeah.
Uh, but the term has now become associated with that. Rendering is, not what it used to mean. It's I wouldn't call it a farming term, but it's like type of processing.
Yeah.
Uh,
Rendering down fat.
yes, yes. Um, but you see how things change. But then the postmodernist says, "Oh yeah, because things change, nothing means anything ever." So
Yeah.
shut up. Like it's in between. Like it's very practical, in fact. Like, yeah, we don't tend to do rendering ourselves mostly. People mostly now buy things. So not a lot of domestic production outside of like rural areas and people who do it large scale. So, but everyone has heard of the term rendering as it relates to computers. So it's a very practical thing that has happened.
Hmm.
So yeah, that's why I'm so upset again that people they desire to preserve as much simplicity as possible, but that's not going to get you anywhere necessarily.
Hmm.
Okay, we should start winding things down.
Yeah, it's time.
Yeah,
It's
we
definitely
started
time.
late a bit, and we've covered half of the things we wanted to cover, which is
Yeah.
for us like major,
Yeah.
very
And
grand for us.
and we're gonna have to come up with a schedule where we start planning what we're going to talk about in advance, and not just
Yeah,
try and like come up with 3 topics off the top of our head before. Like basically, what's ended up happening for anybody who's still watching at this point is that we're just having a normal conversation as if we're not live, and
yeah.
then
This is what it sounds like when we talk. We
yeah,
just
and that's what
have
we were doing.
content.
If you go back to the start of the stream, you'll see I just randomly started. I just clicked live at one point while we were talking, and I was like, yeah,
Yeah.
the conversation just continued. So so it's a little bit it's been unstructured today. We have big plans. We are going to come back every Friday, and we are going to start having planned content
Yep.
and structure and even clips.
We're working on things. We want to
They'll be down here.
find like a brand, so to speak. Like
Hmm.
try to establish a formula that we follow.
Yeah.
And if not, we can always just chat like this because there's always something to talk about. It's like we get like 2 world-changing events per week. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Posh says it was or not Posh. Sorry, Crispy says it was a grand stream. You see, you wouldn't understand.
Yeah, had I not known that Dr. Crispy was Irish,
Yeah.
I would now be left with a dilemma.
It's a word with nuance when we use it though, because a grand stream you'd almost mean good when you say it that way. You'd be like, "Ah, yeah, it was a grand stream." Like that was like you wouldn't mean it was fine or acceptable. You'd be like, you'd almost mean good there, but it never means the way Americans or English people use it. You know,
Yeah, so not
it
like
never.
the GOP.
It's totally its own usage of the term, and we do not at all use the other version unless we're talking about like a hotel that's called the Grand Hotel or something like that.
And by the way, the word just means big.
Yeah, grand.
Yeah, it's similar to the word great. Just means big.
Raid Jim Bob is going live.
Do we have the ability to raid?
Can I figure that out right now? I'll try. Yeah, we will hopefully have Jim Bob on. He has agreed to come on. So
I forgot to message him yesterday.
we're hyper organized.
Yeah, we're very good at planning on planning.
But I have on Baron Strawberry, I have Baselit Analyzer coming on Tuesday, and he is going to be discussing with me his interpretations and ideas around Irish cinema from the 90s and maybe early 2000s. Depending which movies we choose, I'll have to contact him immediately after this to remind him that that's what we're doing. And then the week after, I think I have Jim Bob, who's coming on. Is it? I can't even remember.
After that, it's me.
And then it's Posh. And myself and Posh are going to be discussing religion and nationalism in the Irish context.
Yeah. So I'm reading up on that.
Yeah, I'll be interviewing Posh rather than having a discussion with him then about that concept. Jim Bob, I also have Rachel Wilson coming on. Hopefully, she hasn't actually committed to that yet, but she will. Coming on the week after that. Although, did you watch my interview with David Patrick Harry?
I got through most of it.
where he accused me of calling her out. I actually contacted her afterwards. I contacted her afterwards and I was like, I wasn't actually calling you out there. Yeah, she was fine. She was fine. Because I was thinking, God, because I say inappropriate things like in natural conversation all the time where people read me up wrong. And I was like, was that one of those moments? Should I have not said that? But it turns out it was okay. I was legitimately worried. I apologized to her and everything. And she was like, no, it's grand.
Yeah.
See, even there, it's grand. See, it's fine.
Yeah. Grand.
It's calling. So it's basically calling someone overweight. What's he referring to? Oh no.
Great and grand meaning big.
Who is Jim Bob? Moldy Apple has no idea who Jim Bob is. I just don't believe you about Moldy Apple. Because Moldy Apple is, I know he watches Church of the Eternal Logos. So I'm pretty sure he knows who Jim Bob is. But if you don't know, made by Jim Bob, excellent channel, well worth watching. Even though he's doing very, very well at the moment, I think he is significantly underrated in terms of what he offers. He's quite entertaining.
Yeah, on multiple levels, right?
He's entertaining. He's intelligent, and he's very verbose.
That's what I wanted to say. What he's very good at is lateral movement. He can just pick up references, just moves left, right all the time, which I lack. Right, that's why with him we have good chemistry, because I'm sort of just this giant rock that's supposed to be rolling over things. I don't move very quickly. I get puns and stuff instantly, but that's like automatic, like auto-generated. But yeah, which is why I told him, not only is he good for comedy, he's a great comedy facilitator, right? So when he is on with Jay or someone, he very easily adapts to it, right?
Yeah.
But when I was live, for example, with David Patrick Harry, like both of us aren't very high energy, right? So my jokes don't land as much. And he's quite a bit more serious than I am. I'm kind of both very serious and just completely nonsense at the same time. That's what my entire personality is, just like two extremes mashed together without any forethought. But yeah, so for Jim Bob, he's very good at both adapting and facilitating humor as much as producing
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So anybody, if there's by some rare chance anybody who doesn't know who Made by Jim Bob is at this point, go on over, check him out. Underrated channel, in my opinion. What was the other thing? Actually, one of my favorite interviews on my channel on Baron Strawberry is my Jim Bob one, the original Jim Bob one, the
it. Yeah,
first
yeah, I
one.
remember.
That was such a good interview. I actually want to go back and start interviewing in that style again, because that's kind of how I used to interview, because nobody was ever watching me. And then when I started getting my numbers started getting very high after like John Waters,
Mhm.
I started like kind of rethinking and overthinking, I think, my interviews, and I lost the fun for it, and that's why I stopped. But
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, I get it.
yeah, I'm gonna have to go back to that. I like that. I'd like to go back. It's so. I actually made him laugh during that one so hard that he snorted, uh, and he had to try and hide it. Like,
yeah,
but,
yeah, he doesn't laugh too much. He has these outbursts,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
except when he's drinking. Then I've heard when he had a couple, he tends to go into laughing fits.
Okay,
But usually you just get that.
yeah,
Right, that's about as much. Um, but yeah, so but I remember you had all the pictures
yeah,
prepared.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That was
Uh,
classic. That was classic.
it was a great, great stream.
Yeah, everywhere he'd go, and no matter what he'd bring up.
Yeah, and that's what the surprise factor was ongoing, right?
Mm-mm-mm.
So that's why it produced as much reaction as it
Yeah.
did. Yeah,
Yeah,
great stuff.
it worked so well. All right, guys, thanks for coming along. Happy 4th of July, Americans, as Dr. Crispy says. And yeah, happy 4th of July, Independence Day today, isn't it?
Yeah.
Um, Unfortunately, we don't celebrate that here, so I don't get to do any of the interesting things that you guys are doing. Um, Baron was crushed. Yeah, if Crispy remembers, Baron was crushing the
Yeah,
dick
I
pic.
remember as well.
It was great. Yeah, well, anybody who has never gone and never seen my dick pic interview with Jim Bob, someone like Lock Ray probably doesn't remember that era of my channel. You should go back and check out one of my the very early interviews made by Jim Bob, the dick pic stream. All right, guys, see you later. I'll be on Tuesday. I'll definitely be back here with Posh next Friday. And are you streaming between then and now?
Maybe I lack any consistency whatsoever.
So we'll see.
Yeah,
All right.
if it happens, it happens.
Okay. Bye bye.
Okay, God bless.